I see a little pop-up. Yeah.
Okay, and I think this thing is live. Let's see, we've got people coming in, so we can.
Yay.
Everything's working. Always exciting. Well, hello everybody. May the fourth be with you, as you said earlier. Excited to have this little chat today, so bear with me here as I get my act together. All right, so welcome everybody to our CyberWise chat. I'm Diana Graber. I'm the author of Raising Humans in a Digital World and founder of CyberWise and Cyber Civics. I'm here with Dr. Pamela Rutledge below. She is the director of the Media Psychology Research Center, also with Rick Andrioli, who's the editor-in-chief of Parentology, and Arias Collins, who is our community manager at CyberWise. As always, she will be manning or womaning our chat today. So if you have questions as we go along, please put them in there and she will interrupt us and ask us those questions. And also stay to the end because that's when we give our important tips to parents regarding this topic. So today we're talking about Instagram, which we have not talked about for a while because TikTok seems to take all the air out of the room, right? But Instagram is an important one. For those of you living under a rock for the last million of years, Instagram is a social media app used by more than 1 billion people around the world. It's where we share photos, videos, and messages. Teens still rank it as one of the top social media apps they use, along with TikTok, Snapchat, and YouTube. I just saw a study, for a long time, Instagram was their #1 place or social media site that they use. And I just saw a study that's been surpassed now by TikTok and Snapchat, which I think is interesting. Also, as you know, it's really easy for underage kids to use the app. They simply have to do a little simple math and lie about their age, and voila, they have an account. I read an interesting study from Ofcom that finds that half of children between 11 and 12 have social media accounts, which I think we've seen studies like that elsewhere. But the weird thing in that study that I did not know is that it reports that parental awareness of the age limit is low, that only 8 in 10 parents surveyed know that there is an age limit on Instagram or Snapchat, that you have to be 13 to use the services. So I found that super surprising. Which leads us to our topic of today. In March, BuzzFeed News broke the story that Facebook plans to launch a version of Instagram targeted at children younger than 13. They say that they want to do it so that kids can safely use Instagram for the first time, which is really what we're going to talk about today. But first, before we do that, we want to talk about Instagram in general. We got together ourselves ahead of time and we kind of made a list of the things that we hear parents worry about when it comes to Instagram. So we made like our top 6 or 8 list. And number 1 on that list, and I think it's a concern that we all share, is data collection. And this is something all of these apps have at one time or another come under fire for, collecting the personal information of users. And now that's going to be really young kids because even though there's a law called COPPA, Child Online Privacy Protection Act, that protects young children from having their personal information collected, when these young kids are lying about their age and saying they're older, they're not protected by that law. So let's get into this. I know, Rick, you had some thoughts about why these companies collect data, what they do with it. Do you want to jump in and address that?
Well, the thing that I think we always have to keep in our heads whenever kids want to be on social media or ourselves is that these companies are businesses, right? They are here to make money. And I worked at a people search service, and we often got people saying, why isn't this free? Well, because millions and millions of dollars have been invested in making this work, and you get that back, and your investors get that back by making money. So the data collection is all about how to do targeted advertising. And I've done paid media ads across all the different networks, and Facebook is by far the best. It is by far the best. And they finally worked out the kinks a bit between Facebook and Instagram. So now you can target better on Instagram as well. Now they're very specific on some things though, if parents are concerned. Facebook does not allow smoking or vaping ads. They don't allow firearms, alcohol to anybody under 21, assuming they've told the age, and limited on CBD, definitely no marijuana, any kind of drug stuff. Things can get in, but the algorithm is pretty smart about catching and blocking it. And back in 2019, Instagram also started limiting diet and cosmetic procedure ads for kids under 18 to try to deal with body image issues that were going on. They also have set up ways that kids can notify or complain about an inappropriate ad, which is an important thing that I think parents need to know is available and should walk through their kids how to, just as you would with a cyberbully, how you can complain about an inappropriate ad.
Yeah, and one thing that I think we could even add to that is sometimes the data collection isn't sort of immediately turned around and used. So let's say there's Facebook for Kids, they're gathering all this data on kids. Even if it's not used real time to target, it goes into a database that then gets sold to someone who then can look at behavioral patterns of kids, products, likes, all of that kind of thing. So it actually becomes a value to someone, even if it's not specifically targeted. So I think that the people need to sort of stop and think about how that works. But, to your point, and you're sort of a master of all this sort of targeting stuff, but that stuff is super confusing to most mere humans. And so if as adults, we don't really understand how targeting works, it's really asking a lot to expect kids to understand how their behavior is going to result in targeting, although it's entirely possible they get it better than I do. It's still, it's still a pretty complex thing, especially for young kids who aren't good developmentally at hypothetical situations. They, don't do what if questions with 8-year-olds. It's wait till they're 12.
I'm glad you brought that up, Pam, because it's something that we hit pretty hard in cyber civics, and we do it in 7th grade when kids have those critical thinking skills in place. And also they're very analytical and critical of adults' methods and methodologies anyway. So it's a really good time to teach kids how that works. Arius just taught those lessons this year, right, Arius? And
Yeah.
to understand targeting and tracking and how it works and how their information is being collected, that is like a user should know that. It's like you don't pay for something unless you know what you're getting, and they're paying with their personal information. So those kids should know what the exchange is all about before they engage in it. And Arius, maybe you can jump in, but I know when I've taught those lessons, kids are like, holy cow, this isn't fair. Like, I don't want them to know this about me. And I think it's just respectful for any user to be given that knowledge ahead of time.
Well, and to Rick's point, it's very easy to forget that because people are socializing or being entertained on these sites, that they are in fact a business run by Facebook, run by Instagram. Well, that's the same thing now. And that is an expensive proposition to run. But we're not used to thinking of the sort of entertainment as being, our behavior as being the payment for that privilege.
Yeah. So yeah. I think for good reason, we're all on the same page that the collection of personal information is a big one. And all of these apps, we're not picking on Instagram today. At one time or another, they've all come into scrutiny for this process because especially young kids are using their apps, obviously, and their information is being collected and used. Rick, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's all good. I would be beating a dead horse by talking about how targeting works. So we're good. Yeah.
Well, that, and that kind of leads us into the whole thing with it. You said that this is a business model. And when you think about what's happening out there with the business model, TikTok is attracting super young users. I found a great number that now I can't find. Oh yeah. In July, TikTok classified more than a third of its 49 million daily users, a third of that, in the United States as being 14 years old or younger, according to internal documents in the New York Times. That's a lot. Who can do the math quickly?
Wow.
I need a kid.
Well, the National PTA Association back in 2017 did a poll of parents, and the parents, 80% of the parents said their 8 to 12-year-olds were on social media. So I had to kind of chuckle when you said, that they wanted Instagram for kids, so it would be the first time a kid had posted on Instagram. It's like, yeah, in your dreams.
I think the fact that so many young kids are going on TikTok, as we know, Snapchat, as we know, and Instagram, because it's owned by Facebook, it makes it a little more, tried and true and maybe a little old fashioned. And so perhaps they see kids gravitating to these hotter apps, and this is their shot at getting the younger kids used to using Instagram. So do you guys agree?
Yeah, because if you think about it, so people are, Snapchat and TikTok are so popular. And the joke is that Facebook is for grandparents, which is probably my age. And, and Instagram is like old people in their 30s. The easiest way to get them in is how do you get the kids into it before? So then that brings down the age when they're old enough to get full Instagram. I mean, it's really, even if they are not using their data, which I find suspicious because it's collected somewhere, it will help them get people who like the platform when it's ready for them.
So
Right.
I know we've touched on a lot of this already, but Pam, what are some of the downsides of having kids under 13 using a version of
Well,
Instagram? Not that they'd use it, but if they did.
right, right. Well, I mean, you know, first of all, I don't think the Instagram for kids is going to fly, because I don't know a kid who, if I said, here, this is made for kids, that would want to use it unless they were 5 or 6 and they thought it was designed for 8-year-olds. So already you've got kind of a barrier to access in terms of the psychology. But with kids between 8 and 12 who are looking at all these images, particularly on Instagram, images are very powerful. They communicate all kinds of emotions and context and, you know, all kinds of things instantaneously, because we don't have to translate text. It isn't, there's no text to translate into, you know, from symbols to meaning. We just, it goes right to meaning. So it, for kids who don't have critical thinking ability, it starts to really skew their perception of social norms, or what it means to be popular, or what it means to look good, or what it means to be one of the kids, right? So it's, or cool, you know, so it really can redefine how someone sees the world through these kinds of images.
Yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about content, because that was the other big concern that we all talked about, was just there's so much different types of content. There's wonderful stuff, like kids share cutest pictures and beautiful things that they're doing. We can never forget about that. But seeped in there is a lot of really bad content. Adults put really crappy content on there. And I know, Rick, I'm reading through the notes, but you mentioned some things that I think you guys have covered. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, so there was a study, I should probably have had down what the study was, but that it showed that with young people, Instagram was the #1 destination used for finding their news, followed by Snapchat and then TikTok. And the big concern that I think of there is that Instagram doesn't allow click-throughs to see the article like you do on Facebook, for example.
Oh,
So a person is getting their entire news story from an image and probably the first 2 lines of text, right? Because then it only shows 2 and then you have to click it to get more. And even then, how much of an article, how much of a fact are you getting in there? You know, so that was one of the things that I thought was really troubling.
I would agree with that being troubling, especially because Instagram has been so institutionalized, in part because of the Facebook, but because it gets covered a lot in national media. So it's actually kind of been legitimized in the eyes of kids as a source. So I'm sadly not as surprised as I probably should be that kids are using that as a news source, but it also really contributes to what we call filter bubbles, or these sort of misinformation, that kind of spread your beliefs about what's true. Really, that really changes that.
Yeah, you know, that's something I talk about a lot when I do the parent talks. I show them things on Instagram news that look like news that kids see. And there's a couple things here. Think about the young kid alone in their room, you know, getting news this way. They don't have parents there to console them or to explain it. So they're getting it just from this picture and this headline. And there's a lot of stuff about coronavirus that's super scary. There's a lot of stuff about vaccines that's scary. I mean, our news is scary today. Like, and just the fact that kids are trying to figure this out on their own, I think that's the kind of content that concerns me. You know, that's not even touching on the other stuff, violence or sex. Or Rick, you put in the notes something about neo-Nazi groups recruiting on Instagram.
Yeah, that was a big concern. There were 2 reports, one out of the UK that was social media in general, and then there was a thing with I can find the link because I have it on, here we go, Instagram, where they found some groups that were on it. Now Instagram jumped on that right away, but the thing is you can get involved in finding things out and not real. And an adult can do that without even realizing what they're hearing, until it's kind of like, wait a minute, is this sort of alt-right? Is this, you know, really liberal? What is this that I'm listening to? And like what Pam was saying, once you start clicking on certain things in Instagram, you're going to see more of those things from targeted people, or targeted advertising and whatnot. So if I'm finding stuff that or a kid is finding stuff that they're getting into and they're not quite realizing what they're getting into, well, then they'll start getting more and more and more, and that's that information bubble I was talking about.
Yeah. And before we leave the topic of content, and I know Pam will want to chime in here too, because I know we agree on this. There's a lot of lovely stuff, the kids are creative and they share pretty pictures and they're like figuring out who they are by sharing their selfies and their friends. I was telling the guys this earlier because I'm, a full lurker on social media and I follow my kids and their friends. They'll put a picture and their friends will say, oh, lovely, you're so pretty. Oh, you look beautiful. I mean, I see hundreds of just positive posts that way. And that's wonderful. So we cannot overlook that fact that kids use this app in really wonderful ways a lot of the time. Pam, I know you agree with me.
Yeah, and I mean, I was going to say how ironic we're sort of taking the devil's advocate again, which I'm hardly ever on this side. But I mean, it is true if you ask kids who use Instagram a lot what they use it for, they will list exactly those things that you're talking about: self-expression, connecting with others, sharing ideas. I do worry, parents say, oh, I'm worried about predators or I'm worried about porn. I am much more worried about the sexualization of young women than I am having some kid accidentally come across porn. Because we all know we grow up plenty fast as it is, but that kind of sexualization, like what was it, the Charmin challenge and the outline challenge that were on TikTok, I think that was, but those kinds of things shift the value proposition or the self-worth from the internal to the external. One of the things I love about Instagram and TikTok is when people are creative, because they get rewarded for that creativity. That actually builds self-esteem. But when it's just image, when it's how pretty you look or your shape, especially when you're a young girl, I think that's very damaging because they don't have the ability to really evaluate that critically and make a judgment.
Yeah, I agree. And that goes kind of hand in hand with this share and despair term that we hear. I know, Rick, I think you've covered that before. Do you want to explain what that means?
But before we move on, sorry, we just had a Q&A. I just wanted to make sure that we covered this before we jump into that. It was kind of about the ads, but we have a digital expert on here that's wondering if you could give some advice for what parents can do so that their kids aren't targeted by inappropriate ads. Like, is there any concrete advice that you have to help with that?
Rick, you want to take that one?
I mean, the best way, well, look, so inappropriate ads, like things that would be for more adult nature, Facebook's good enough to not send it to somebody who's not interested, because Facebook makes money when a user clicks an ad, right? So I get charged if you click the ad and come through to my website. Facebook wants me to get the best performance possible, so I spend more money with them. So it behooves them to not send inappropriate ads that don't relate to your kid to your kid. But say, for example, that the child starts liking a bunch of Disney fan sites. They will start getting ticketed or targeted by, Disney Plus, by film studios, by anything like travel, that kind of stuff. Or people who are selling Disney type product. So if that's the thing, then the best way is there's the 3 dots at the top right of an ad or of any post. You can click it and you can block those, or you can say, and they'll ask you why. And one of the options, I believe, is I don't like this, right? So it's not even like this is spam, this is inappropriate. It's just I don't like this. And that will start to filter for that user.
Yeah, that's such.
Oh, go. I had one other question come up, but go ahead, Pam.
Oh no, I just wanted to encourage parents to look for these dots, see where these things are and make sure your kids know how to use them. If they're old enough to be on the social media app, they are old enough to respond, to block, to note inappropriate or I just don't like this. So you really have to get the kid participating in keeping their environment safe.
Yeah. And I wanted to add 2 things to that. Number one, this is why it's so important for kids to be honest about their age, because there is age gating on almost every app. They won't be protected as a 12-year-old if they say they're 18. A lot of kids I know say they're 99 because they think it's hilarious to do that. Number two is on the apps, all of these apps have excellent settings, super excellent settings. You go into the settings, you go into privacy, and you can select things that you don't want to see, that you want blocked. And every parent should sit down with their child when they sign up for these apps and go through the settings together and agree what's appropriate for your family. You know, we have to take personal responsibility here. Again, as Rick said, it's a business model, but we are the consumer. But as consumer, we have responsibilities too. And one of those responsibilities is to learn how to use the settings in the apps that we use because they're excellent. They're there for a reason. Unless we use them, they're not going to work. All right, I'm off the soapbox. Go ahead, Darius.
Perfect. And for everyone, Rick just dropped a link to how to actually go into the settings and do that. But the question was, if you guys know with this new Instagram for kids, do you know what the ads targeting will be like for that platform yet?
No, we reached out to Instagram to find out, and they said that everything is still in development right now, and they don't have any comment other than the public comment they've sent out. I think I have nothing to back this up, but I think what they're doing is juggling what we're talking about right now and how to make it something that kids will go to that won't anger the parents. And so they're trying to find that sweet spot there.
Good luck with that.
You know, a lot of the other 13 and over app, or 13 and under, I should say, apps do a lot of things like you can buy stickers, you know, that you can put on a picture or things like that. Yeah.
And I've seen a lot of groups have gotten together and sent petitions to Instagram asking them not to do this. So there's a chance they could respond to that.
Yeah, if it becomes too much of a headache and they don't see, like exactly what Pam's saying, like what kid is going to go to something called Instagram Kids? They might need to come up with a whole new wacky name for it or something. But they will weigh it and go like, and do a test group stuff. They'll do test groups like every company does. And if they find out nobody's going to go, they're not going to invest the millions that's needed.
Well, and I think what the parents need to remember is that kids aren't really loyal to a platform, right? They're on TikTok because their friends are on TikTok, or because of the content on TikTok, because it gives them something to talk about with their friends. If tomorrow there's a new Club Penguin, a new app where all their friends are, they'll go there, and we'll all be over here worrying about TikTok or Instagram, and they won't be there at all. So the reason that it's so important to teach the kids is that teaching moves with them. Mm-hmm. But if you're just worried about an app or the tool, then you've isolated the learning.
Darius, was there another one?
No, we got it. We're excited about Rick's article, getting those settings ready to go.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to pick up, we were talking about the idea of share and despair. And maybe that's a better one for you, Pam, because there's so much psychology behind that. But a lot of people have referred to Instagram as the share and despair app. What does that mean?
Well, it means that people worry a lot about their kids, teens, tweens, the whole lot. And, and grownups are susceptible too, to going on and looking at images or looking at content and using that to judge themselves. So we're doing what's called social comparison. Now, what I want to emphasize is that social comparison is a normal reaction, right? We are social animals. We use that to learn how to navigate the social environment, right? We learn what other people will accept in terms of the kind of manners we use. We use it in all kinds of ways. It's problematic when we use it to compare ourselves with something over which we have no control. So if I wanted to, play tennis like Serena Williams and start beating myself up because I'm not as tall as she is, I can feel bad all day long, but it's not going to change how tall I am. So this is where talking with kids about how these images make them feel is really important, so that you can help them see the difference between things to be inspired by. I might be inspired to go out and practice tennis because Selena practices all the time and she's amazing. So if you focus on the things that inspire you, social comparison can be very positive. That's how we get mentors. But if you're focusing on the things that you can't change and you start victimizing yourself and evaluating yourself based upon that comparison, then it becomes problematic.
And I think, we work so much with kids, teaching them that you can't really believe everything you see. There's filters, people make themselves look better. Photoshop, blah, blah, blah. You know, you have to remember that what you see online isn't really the full picture. And there's also hand in hand with that is the fear of missing out. It seems like everyone else is having a better life. I was just thinking, I have FOMO because one of my favorite apps is Strava, which is where all my friends that mountain bike. And so I'll be doing this right now, looking at Strava, going, everyone else gets to ride their bike today. It's not fair. You know, so this is universal. I mean, adults
Right.
fall prey to all this stuff too, which gives us a reason to talk to kids because they're shared human experiences on these apps.
Right.
And it's so important to have these conversations with kids about it.
It is. And, you know, developmentally, kids develop their self-esteem through creating things that other people like, through demonstrating competence. And it just so happens that now there's this big arena for creating and getting feedback that might not be the kind of things that, you know, are lifelong skills, right? I mean, I suppose you could go on and be a videographer or something, making videos on TikTok. But they get self-esteem from that kind of feedback. So you have to be very careful to not devalue what they're creating as you're trying to sort of reorient them to other kinds of skills and internalizing their self-esteem.
Good point. And I know, Rick, you guys have covered a lot of what we call Instagram influencers on your on parentology. What articles come top to mind when you think of that topic?
Well, and really this is probably a better question for Pam, but the biggest thing with the influencers thing is, why do they follow them? And why do they follow them even though they know that it can cause trouble? You know, like there was a whole thing last year during pandemic where influencer groups, mostly from TikTok world, but had like gotten together to rent a house in the Hollywood Hills, and they were throwing parties all the time, and the city's shutting off their power and their water. Neighbors are complaining, police are called. But they could do that, and they could get tons of kids and by kids I mean, you know, probably 16 and older, to show up to these parties. You know, that's, I think, the bigger question is, okay, I get why they would follow them, but where does that line stop? You know,
The line
of like I admire a celebrity, but when do I stop and realize, well, look, we're never going to be best friends, right? Or what's and I'm not going to necessarily listen to the celebrity's endorsement and think, oh yeah, I got to start drinking Diet Coke now all the time. You know,
right.
How do you have that conversation with kids in that world?
Yeah, and I think that that's a really great point, because there is a tendency when we see people on YouTube and Instagram and these places where they're really making eye contact. It's a very real, you know, whether you like it or not, it's a very real feeling. It's very authentic. It's a, you know, sort of a social media's version of reality TV. People do start to feel like they know these characters. And so they really do feel connected to them, which is why you see battles between fan groups, right? The Taylor Swift fans are battling the Katy Perry fans, or the, you know, the beauty bloggers. And so people do really invest. So that's just one of those conversations to have with kids, so that they understand the difference between admiration and liking, and that all that's fine, but that there's a limit to what's, you know, behavior that is appropriate for them. But I mean, some of those things, Rick, it's sort of like watching a car wreck, right? You're like, holy cow, right? So it's whether or not people are emulating that or just waiting to see when the police show up is sort of debatable.
Right. And speaking of likes, you've probably seen that Instagram, well, they came under fire a few years ago because there was a big study that found that they ranked the worst in terms of kids' well-being and of all the social media apps, and people thought it was because of the likes, and kids like hoping they'd get X number of likes to their photo or else they'd take it down. And so Instagram over the last year or so has been testing hiding the likes for the kids in order to help their well-being, and they found that it had a positive approach. So that brings me to the topic of anxiety, because we've read so much about that this year, and there's been so many studies supposedly drawing some sort of correlational link between social media use and depression or anxiety. And I think this is important to talk about because my favorite study, and Pam probably taught me this when I was in school, I think it's been around not long, but it was a long-term study done of teens and social media use, and it found, like, they call it the Goldilocks hypotheses. And I can never remember the research, how to pronounce the researcher's name. Pam, you probably know Krasinski or something.
Oh yes, I know who you mean. The guy with
Yeah,
no vowels.
it's a very hard name to pronounce. But anyway, what they found, and again, this is a long-term study, they found that social media use in teens exists on a bell curve. So you've got the kids that use it too much. They have, more, less well-being, perhaps more depression. Then you have the kids who don't use it at all, and they're as equally depressed and have terrible well-being as the kids who use too much. And they found that it's a medium somewhere in the middle is the perfect amount of social media use for kids because they need it to connect with their peers. You just don't want them to do too much or too little. So I think that's really important for parents to remember. This is not throw out the baby with the bathwater. This is try to
Right.
find balance with it. So
Yeah, and well, I was going to say, and just because we don't think of that as a legitimate relationship, somebody being friends on social media doesn't mean the kids aren't getting benefits from that. But I just want to underscore the point that you're making, Diana, and I know that study, and I can't pronounce his name either. Next time, but parents need to be very careful to not sucker into the headlines that are that to me are essentially the equivalent of clickbait, whereas like social media causes X. When most studies on social media are not causal, it isn't, they can't prove that something causes something. So it's equally likely that right now, anxious people, because they're anxious, because they can't go out of their house, are using more social media. If you did a study on those people, you would show a relationship between social media use and anxiety that really had nothing to do with each other. So it's really important to think about how you're using something, as Diana said, how much you're using something. Those are the things that matter in terms of whether the impact is positive or negative.
yeah, and I was just thinking there should be a study as like teens who do not use social media show anxiety and depression. I mean, that would be a perfect study.
They do.
Yeah, they do because it happens. So it's all over the map. And again, we fall prey to it. All of us in this four corners of using fear to get people to come to things like this. And, it's there's two sides to every story, and anxiety and depression their kids are experiencing that for a variety of reasons right now. And a lot of them go to social media in order to find solace with each other and support one another. So I think that's important to remember too.
That is, and Diana, the idea of teens and depression and anxiety is not a new story, independent of social media. I can remember 10 years ago stories about how kids were feeling the pressure to apply to colleges because they couldn't get in, so there's all kinds of ways that teens are feeling pressure right now to grow up fast, to perform, to get, you can't just have a straight A average anymore. You have to have over a straight A average. All of these things that impact them, that, as Diana says, social media can sometimes provide an outlet and even normalize those anxieties so that they might still be anxious, but at least they know they're not alone.
So Rick, I know you guys have done a ton of stories on screen time. That was the last of our short list of concerns that parents have about Instagram. Do you think that screen time is going to ramp up with the end of the pandemic, or is it going to stay the same, or is that even a concern?
I don't know. Everybody, again, talk about fear-based headlines. Every pitch I got was about screen time's increasing, and this is going to kill creativity or brains or whatever. And then you find out, well, parents needed to give their kids screen time because parents had to try to figure out how to teach kids and do their jobs and all of that. Like, so I don't know. We have nothing about going forward, although we could talk about that at the end of this webinar, Diane. About that thought there.
Reminding me of that.
See how you kind of set it up? I kind of hit it back. Okay.
So with all that we talked about so far, raise your hand if you think Instagram for kids under 13 is a really great idea. And if you don't think it's a great idea, tell us in the chat box if you think this is a great idea.
We do have one question too, Diana, that popped up.
Okay.
So we have someone who's asking about if you guys know anything about the phenomenon of social contagion, which is the explosion of young people, especially girls, wanting to change sex, and wondering if you think that Instagram has anything to do with that's more visual, or I don't know if we've done any research on that
Yeah.
specific topic, but just throwing it out there.
I can't point to the research, and it's something that I will look into because I'm curious about that. But my personal opinion, working with kids and watching what they do on Instagram on that, I think it's made it okay for kids who feel like perhaps they're struggling with gender identity to not hold it inside and to be more vocal about it. And I think that's kind of lovely, and they're supporting one another. I can share a story from personal experience regarding this, and this is from a long time ago when my oldest daughter was still in high school, and her good friend, he came out on Instagram, and the support he got it made me cry. Honestly, I'm not even making that up. Like the outpouring of support and love he got from his peers was so incredible. So I don't know. I think kids struggle with this, and I think we're living in a society now where we're making it easier for kids who struggle to find outlets for support.
Yeah, and I want to sort of underscore something here. Emotions can move across networks, right? There is a social contagion in terms of happiness. And in fact, happiness spreads more and is stickier than bad news, believe it or not. Bad news might get your attention, but people don't like to hang out with downers, right? So they cluster around happier people. There is absolutely no evidence that social media makes you do something you wouldn't otherwise do. So there may be kids out there who want to experiment with their gender identity and would never have said so otherwise. For them, they might want to talk about this. That might encourage them to be more forthright, but it will not take someone who never thought of it and say, oh, okay, I think I'm going to switch genders today. Not going to happen.
I saw there's another question curious about the 8-year-old. That's a cute one.
Yeah, I just wonder why do you guys think kids are so desperate to use it? And is there anything as parents we could say to them to like keep them at bay? Is there any way to like okay,
say
perfect.
No.
you
me when I was young and it worked. Just saying.
You can say no. You can also, find out why they're so eager, right? Maybe that they have a lot of friends or that there's something going on. But I would say if you have a young child and they really want to use Instagram, use it with them. Find pictures to post together, post them together. But I would not turn an 8-year-old loose on Instagram all by themselves without supervision.
And actually, this is a great segue to Rick, because you guys ran a perfect story to answer this about social media apps for the under 13 set. Can you give us a rundown on some of those?
Yeah, so we did, I think there were 5 of them. Yeah. And to be fair and give credit, we relied heavily on Common Sense Media. I was like, why can't I remember their name? And their sort of ranking on things. All of these are very easily parental controlled. A lot of them are really games, fun, sticker things. Like I think, when I was in elementary school and we had the binders where we would, have stickers and trade them and that kind of thing. Like, I feel like this is the digital equivalent, lots of crafts. There's Girl to Girl Wall, which I think is a really cool one for girls specifically. And it's a free app. It contains no ads. We list kind of what these things are. Some of them are pay, and that's how their business model runs, right? So there was Kinzu, and you guys know the owner creator of Kinzu,
Kinzu
right?
is wonderful. Like I did have the pleasure of meeting the owner. He's written a great book called Screen Captured, and he has kids himself, and they take such measures for child protection, and their app is really about the family using it together for connection. It's spelled Kinzoo. Super great app for families.
Yeah, and similar, like there's Kids World, which is age 11 and up. And with that one, they have actual human monitors, not an AI, monitoring what's going on. So that's good. Pop Jam does games and friends, sorry, art. You can do art, play games, and meet friends. There we go, Rick. And what's interesting with that one is that it shuts down from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. in your time zone. So can't be on it during those times, which I thought was a clever kind of addition that they did to it. So here, I'm gonna.
You put the URL up in the chat.
Yeah, let me
Okay, great,
get that somehow.
awesome. Yeah, it's a really good resource if you've got younger kids.
I want to just add, Amber had a very good solution to her 8-year-old wanting to use Instagram, other than sort of counting up to his 13th birthday, is that they created an account for their dog and they manage it together. And that's just a perfect way of allowing
idea.
someone to have some creativity, keeping the focus off of the individual, and also an opportunity to teach them the skills, the privacy skills and all of that stuff that goes with safe social media behaviors.
That's a great idea.
That is,
Isn't it?
I love that idea.
I love it.
All right, so this is our time to wrap up. This is when we roll out our suggestions, which tend to be the same every week, but they're still very valid. I'm gonna let Pam take it away because she's the best.
Okay, well, first I put up, like, Diana's like, we need 3 takeaways, and then I've got 47. But so here's my short list, and then you guys can add what you think I forgot. First of all, kids don't like apps for kids, so don't fool yourself. They're going to be on the real thing. So you have to teach them about the real thing. The kids need to be able to navigate all the social media apps of all kinds, so don't focus on just one, because they need these skills. These skills are really useful offline too. And then talk with kids about the power of image and how that can make you feel, what it is that's different from a picture to a text, so that they start to develop some visual skills and understanding of how images impact us emotionally.
Rick, you want to add to that list?
No, I mean,
There's
that's
about 46 left.
that's it. The other thing though is, and you guys bring this up with cyber civics all the time, is sit and go through the app with the kid, show them how to do different things. You'll learn it also, which I think is really important for the parent to know what's going on. But then empower the child to have agency on being able to determine what they're seeing and how they react to it.
Yeah, and read the privacy policy together. It's interesting, and I know we do that in the classroom in cyber civics. The kids are fascinated by what they're asked to give away, and you read that in the very long privacy policy, and it's important to know that before you exchange your personal information for the app. Set limits, strive for balance. That's an important one. Good manners, that we can't say that enough. Be the same good person you are online as you are offline, because your digital reputation will precede you. One thing about Instagram that we didn't mention, that this is something I teach the kids, is when kids set up a profile and they put their picture and bio, even if they mark themselves as private, that picture and bio is public. So that's really important, because I urge you, if you have young kids, just take a perusal through Instagram and see the kind of pictures and bios kids put up. They're ridiculous. Sometimes they're inappropriate. And what happens is when people who don't know them Google them, those are going to pop up and they don't go away. So work with your kids on choosing an appropriate picture and bio. Really important. And then the other, this is the one I really love, and hopefully you can put the URL up. Arias, this is what we got from Sony. This is a great resource to share with kids, because it shows them where they can go to report misinformation or fake news on every single app they use. It looks like this, if you can see this. Oh no.
It's green, it's disappearing.
It's disappearing. But anyway, it's got everything: YouTube, Google, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. Push a button, it tells you how to report misinformation, poor behavior, all that. So very empowering for kids to know what to do should they encounter that stuff online. And then teach your kids about fake news and misinformation. They should always verify a source. They shouldn't believe a headline. We shouldn't believe a headline. Definitely do not share or like something that you have not verified to be true. What am I forgetting, guys? Is that it?
Model the behavior you want to see in your kids.
I say we end on that note. That's the best of all.
So tell us what's up next.
Okay, so we've been playing around what our next topic should be, but we've been hearing from a lot of parents and teachers that they really want to know what's next after we get out of the pandemic. So we're still playing around with our title, but it's something about how to prepare your kids for the new normal, if there is such a thing, how to transition them out of this pandemic era that we've been in. It feels like an era. Get them back into school, get them reacquainted with proper screen time. What about the kids who don't want to leave online learning? All of that we're going to address next month. And what is the date on that? Let me look. We do it the first Tuesday of every month. And so that would be June
1st.
Oh, June 1st. You're right. June 1. So yes, join us for that. You can always find these on the CyberWise chat tab at the top of the CyberWise news CyberWise website. There's a CyberWise chat tab. That's a lot of CyberWise words in there. All right, you guys, thank you so much again, Rick from Parentology, which is a wonderful online resource. If you don't already subscribe and read it, you should. Dr. Pamela Rutledge, who is the smartest person I know when it comes to media psychology. You should definitely check out her personal website and also the Media Psychology Research Center. And don't forget to visit CyberWise and make sure your schools are teaching cyber civics. Then you don't have to attend these anymore. I'm just kidding. All right, Arius, thank you so much for manning the chat box. I really appreciate it. Everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Take care. Bye-bye.